Hi, I'm Jesse Draper with HNet, and we're here again talking about the American Yawp with Angela Elder and Kathryn Tomasek. First of all, just tell us how you guys get introduced to this project.
Yeah, sure. So I wound up on Ben Wright's email list, which is a dangerous place to be. And so he is one of the founders of this amazing project, and I was a graduate student at the time, and so he invited me to contribute about 300 words or so on my research on widows in the American Civil War to start filling out that chapter. And so I did, and then from there I joined the project as an editor for the Civil War chapter, pulling together all of these amazing pieces they had found and solicited from other scholars into one coherent piece.
Okay, great. How about you, Kathryn?
Also through Ben, he invited me to be a member of the advisory board. I always sort of feel like I ought to use scare quotes because I feel like I do nothing right. But I said that to him when Ben and Joe were on a session about collaboration at the AHA a couple of years ago, and I walked up and I shook their hands because I'm not sure I'd ever met them in real life, right? And I said, I don't do anything, and Ben said, oh, you will have an opportunity. And so, my opportunity was to chair this session, which was just a joy, real joy. Yeah.
So why do you guys think that this is an important project? Because I think it's a fantastic project, but I think this is something where it's just starting to kind of get a little bit of buzz, but why is this important?
Yeah. So when I first joined the project, a big part of the reason I did it was just because I was so curious about it. It seemed like such an ambitious thing to try to pull together, to have this mass collaborative project where you have people from across the nation and scholars from all different stages in their career, from graduate students to people who are teaching at the community college level, to people who are independent scholars, to folks who have been in the field, leading experts for 20 plus years. And so I was interested and I was curious how it would come together, and then as I started getting involved with it and as it started really becoming something that was put online and I used it in my classrooms, then I was just sold. I mean, the way that it's put together, the ability to be able to assign this and not have to charge my students $70+ for it.
It's kind of a big motivator.
Which is a big motivation for me. I mean, so many of our students are working multiple jobs and taking on all of these student loans, and so if I can help that in some small way, and then also ensure that I have a reading anyone has access to, that they all can pull it up on their phone, on their laptop, at the library, and come to class able to discuss.
Right,
was
there's
really
no forgetting
exciting.
your textbook.
Exactly.
Right, yeah.
Absolutely.
How about for you, Kathryn?
Well, for me, so I just want to say something about how important I think it is that Ben and Joe sort of saw a need, right? They leveraged the fact that they're smart guys. They were on the road to a PhD, and they looked around and they saw some of the affordances of the web, right? And they leveraged those along with their privilege to make something that, as Angela says, any student can use, because it is so easy to access, and because it is, yes, indeed, free, and that's really important. I have never been a person who wanted to ask my students to pay $70 for a textbook. I've never been particularly, the kind of person who wanted to teach from a textbook, but it's such a valuable resource. I use it in classes that I teach that are not the survey, but that are at sort of the next level. So I've got a class that's about the new nation, and I've got a class that's about the nation divided, and I say to my students, read this chapter. We're going to read these 3 chapters, and it's brilliant. It's really, really brilliant.
And I mean, one of the greatest things about it too is that it's changing, and it's something that is constantly being revised. And so as our field shifts and evolves, so does this project, which is also really exciting, that I know not only am I giving my students something that is affordable, but it's also really great quality.
So yeah, I want to transition to that because I think that's really important. I mean, I think on one thing, right, especially anybody who's ever taught in a community college, the notion of having a free book for your students is huge, right? But then there's that other, angle where someone will say, well, you get what you pay for, right? And so, so how do we, and I think one of the reasons that I want to have these interviews is how do we dispel this notion that just because it's free doesn't mean that it's a poor quality, right? And I think Ben and Joe really were proud of the quality of the product when I talked to them yesterday, but I'd like to hear from you guys as well. Like, so let's tell our viewers, like, why is this a quality piece of scholarship that's really effective in the classroom for helping students understand American history?
Yeah, I mean, one of the first things when I had never heard of it before that sold me was seeing that list of the advisors and recognizing I've read this person, I know this person, this book, this article, that's something that I use in one of my upper level classes. That stamp of approval from so many people was a big selling point for me. And then just speaking from the perspective of an editor of a chapter, Ben and Joe asked for about 300 words or so from everyone who was contributing to chapters. I think there was about 12 to 15 people who contributed to the first version of the Civil War chapter. A lot of people gave us more than 300 words. They're citing it with all sorts of footnotes. They're adding in all of these primary sources. They're essentially trying to get everything that they're working on into this tight, compact little, which is impossible in some ways, this tight, compact little paragraph of sorts that then I got to stitch together. And so for me, because I got that behind the scenes look, I could see that quality, and then from there, get all of the feedback from other people who are using the book, other scholars who are saying, hey, you forgot about this, or what about that, and then edit the chapter from there. And so that, I think, also adds to the quality
real
of it.
Strength to it, yeah. Right. And at the same time, it doesn't have the kind of the stigma that comes with, of course you're going to do yearly edits because then you have to put out a new issue that students have to pay for, right? You kind of eliminate that.
Right.
Kathryn, I'll let you talk before I hijack
So
that.
what I would say is, I would echo what the things that Angela had said, and I would talk about the fact that this is a mass collaboration as opposed to either a text that's written by an individual or by sort of the typical set of maybe 4 or 5 or 6 people. And even a textbook that is sort of more traditional and edited by a group of people, folks are, an individual can only have command of a limited bit of knowledge.
Right.
And so making this a mass collaboration means that you're, as Angela was saying, you're drawing on the expertise of a much larger group of people, and the authors don't have to, sort of stretch their expertise. You can, no individual author has to stretch their expertise. You can, as an editor, go to someone who actually has expertise where you need it. And I think that's very important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, the majority of us are never going to write a textbook. And there are so many brilliant teachers who are, they're teaching heavy loads, but they're passionate and they have this thing that they are great at. And so, Ben and Joe were wonderful about going out and finding those people and inviting them into this project, and so that can be shared with other students.
Yeah, I'm thinking there's, sometimes we like to ask, if you could say, and what in 300 words or less, what is one thing that history textbooks are missing, that people are missing, and this model really kind of is exactly answering that. It's like, so, so do you feel like that this that the American Yawp, as a result, right, has fewer of those historical blind spots that some of the more traditional texts might have with regards to, say, the agency of people of color early in the American history, or just things along those lines, things that left that borderland history, for example. Things like
I would say, in my view, it's far richer than an ordinary textbook or the general run of textbooks. That's my sense.
Right, and I would just, to add on to that, if there are blind spots, someone's going to let us know. There's that option to add in a comment, to send in emails to the editors, and then to correct any of those spots that we can't help but miss, because none of us are experts in all of it.
Well, even, like I mentioned before the interview, Eric Foner's book, Give Me Liberty, right? His latest edition, even there was a big blind spot with Borderlands, so I've intentionally trying to include this here. And those, even the more traditional venues, they try and do that, but there's something about just the ability to do it on the fly, right? With that web-based platform, which I think is really, it's about keeping it current, keeping it,
You don't have to go through the process of waiting for the next print run, right? And it doesn't increase the cost.
Absolutely. Yep.
In the way a new edition does. Yeah.
So speaking of that, now that the American Yawp has partnered with Stanford and there is a print version coming out, how does that play into this? How do you feel about it? Are you excited about it? Is it something where you envision the digital version maybe having more frequent updates, and then the other one kind of catches up periodically, or did you have any concerns with it moving into print format at all?
I think the press really seems to have a sense of affordability is a priority for this project. That accessibility,
I think they said $25,
exactly,
which is
yes,
absolutely great.
which is great. And so I'm excited about that. And then I always have students who, many of them are so tech savvy and they love reading things on their phones and on their computers, but some of them don't. They like to print it out and underline. And so for me, this just makes it that much more accessible to them. So for those students who do want to have that hard copy that they bring back and forth to class, that option is there for them.
There are some students who like the book and who have a real attachment to the materiality of the book.
I'm one of those for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I've owned a
absolutely.
book that isn't marked up and
Right.
book-geared.
Yeah. I always try not to break the spine, though, and I try to say to people who borrow them, my books are my friends, right? All those kinds of things. But initially, I'm this person. I'm the open edition person. I'm the open access person. I'm the, nobody should ever have to pay for anything, but be practical, right? And so initially, I was a little worried, right? But it seems to me that the press, the editor Margot, it seems to me that they're not for profit press, which makes a difference.
It's very big.
Absolutely.
And they seem to me to be coming from the right place, and I love actually the flexibility of there will be students who want the hard copy.
Right, absolutely.
I like that a lot.
I mean, it's an experiment, but this whole thing is born out of this great experiment. And so, it's seeing how it develops has been really exciting so far, and the vision has been clear, and the steps going in that direction have been successful. So hopefully it'll continue on that road.
Yeah, you hope you don't have to think about these things, but I wonder if we have the list of contributors, which is one thing,
Right.
but I wonder if the partnership with Stanford just gives that a little bit of institutional stamp of
Yes,
Oh,
absolutely.
credibility,
Yeah.
right? Which is unfortunately so important in a discipline like history, which can
Yes.
tend to be a little conservative in terms of that's valid scholarship, that's
Yes.
not.
Yeah, and face it, for authors who are assistant professors, they need to be able to say this went through peer review,
Right.
and it has done at this point, and that's not nothing in the what's the word I'm looking for? Like in the currency that we trade in the academy.
Peer review is essential, right? I mean,
Peer
that's
review is
how you
essential,
essentially say,
absolutely.
this has been vetted by somebody who also
Absolutely.
knows the field. This isn't, And I think that's important to mention because it wasn't mentioned yesterday when I was talking to Ben and Joe, because you talk about soliciting 300 words from these experts, right? But the fact that even though they were identified and invited to do this, that work still also gets fact checked or peer reviewed,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
It's an important thing to kind of
Very important.
bring up in terms of the legitimacy of this project,
Oh,
which again,
absolutely.
it's been so fantastic.
It is. I mean, it's just so new. So I was on the job market last year, and the majority of the places that I interviewed had not heard of it. And it's not what got me the job. It's because it is. It's such. Its strength is also its weakness, in that it is something that I think the idea of this scholarly currency is exactly right. That the field is growing, but sometimes it takes us a while to get there and to recognize the time and the work and the energy that goes into some of these things.
Yeah, and this is one of the kinds of things that I've been working on professionally, right? I was part of the committee that put together the guidelines for professional evaluation of digital. I can't even come up with it. Digital scholarship
Right.
by historians, right? And one of the things that we're still working on 20 years after the sort of opening of the internet to the general public, right? We're still working on being able to understand, as professionals who are doing the evaluation, senior scholars who may not be quite where the junior scholars are in terms of all of that stuff. We still have to sort of move things along and help people understand the great value of the kind of work that Angela has done. And that is going to be part of a tenure portfolio, right?
Yeah.
But even if it were a traditional textbook, it would not have the same kind of meaning that a monograph or a single author article would have. And so, so these are important questions, and they're ones that we have to be sure that we work with and help people answer. Yeah.
Well, great. I want to thank you both so much for taking the time to talk to us about this exciting project.
Such
We're
a
all very
pleasure.
excited about it, especially, like I said, as a community college professor, it's just a game changer.
Oh, yeah.
And so we're all excited. Thank you so much,
Yeah,
Angela.
thank you for having us.
Real pleasure.
Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank